Hi Stampers, this is Melissa Johnson, an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and you are Stampin' with MJ. Today we're going to create a couple of fun cards. We're going to do this gift card holder. It can be a gift card holder where you put a gift card right here, or you could just put another piece of cardstock to put a message there if you don't want to do a gift card, but kind of a fun pop-up feature. Isn't that fun? All right, so we have that, and then we're going to make this card, and this is using the Friendly Foliage set and the Stone and Vine embossing folder. So I'm going to teach you a couple of things to do with this set when we do that one. So I think before we get started, I do want to show you a couple of things. So Stampin' Up! Is doing a product of the month, and we're actually going to use this one. This is called True Blue Florals, and it was a pack of paper that was all in balmy blue. I think there's a little bit of white, and then Night of Navy. And just some really nice floral patterns, 2 of each. So we're going to be using that on the first project. It is still available, so you can get this pack of paper for $5 when you spend $75. Now that $75 has to be before you after you take off any of your rewards, Stampin' rewards that you've earned, but it has to be before tax and shipping also, okay? So last month, February, which I can't believe we're already in March. It is March 1st, 2026, by the way. They did another one. So the January stamp set that we had sold out, so I don't want to show you that one. It was a great sentiment set, but that one has sold out. And it was also $5. So the product of the month is always $5. It could be paper, it could be dies, it could be stamp sets, it could be anything. So keep that in mind. This one, look at some of these. This, you get 3 sheets of each, which is nice when you want to make more than one of a card, right? But look at the other side of that one. Isn't that beautiful? Then you have this one that's got, what colors are in this? Let's see, sorry. This is called Painted Impressions, and it has Darling Duckling, Flirty Flamingo, Granny Apple Green, Lost Lagoon, Misty Moonlight, Petal Pink, and Pretty Peacock. So perfect for spring cards. All right, so this would be the Darling Duckling. Then look at that other side, kind of a mermaid scale, I think. And then this one, actually, that's not really a mermaid scale. This one is. Look at that one. Isn't that beautiful? You got the pinks going into the blues. And then the other side of that is this. Just such pretty paper. And then you have this one, and the other side is this pretty Flirty Flamingo floral. So this one is 4 different double-sided patterns, 3 of each sheet. So it's always 12 sheets. Again, $5 with a $75 purchase. So that is still available. I did check before I came on. So that's those 2. And then we are also going to be using this paper tonight. We're going to do a different version of this card. We're going to use Blackberry Bliss because I ran out of the pattern paper I used on this one. But this is called, let's see, Floral Charm. And that's got a lot of floral patterns, but then the other side is just really nice, subtle tone-on-tone patterns. Very subtle patterns. So you've got, kind of your wild side florals and then your muted side. And that is also still available, but it is on the last chance list. So once it's gone, it's gone. All right, let's get started because this card is the one I want to get started on. It's not a difficult card. I'm not going to say it that way. It's just getting the mechanism on right that could be an issue. So I'm going to go really slow when we get to that part. But let's look at what I've used here. So I did use, I used the Textured Notes dies. So I don't know if you can see the rectangle dies that have different patterns along the edge. And I used the largest one. And then I cut 2 pieces from cardstock. And this one you might be able to see the pattern a little bit better. I'm hoping, if I can get it in the light the right way. So I cut 2 pieces, and this one is, let me give you some sizes here. So this one ends up being 4 1/4 by 2 3/4, and you need 2 of those. And then the smallest rectangle die in that set was used to cut out this centerpiece, and that's for our mechanism to go through. So 2 of those. This patterned piece ends up being 5 1/4 by 4. And then we just have a piece of cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Okay, so that. And then I have another piece of that True Blue floral paper, and that's going to go on one of those. It's going to go on our solid piece here. This one measures 2 1/2 by 4. Okay. Then for the inside sentiment, and let me show you where that's going. The inside sentiment has I Think You're Amazing. Now that came from this set that is called Words of Beauty. And this was part of a suite that had 2 bundles and a lot of other really good things in it. So take a look at that. But there's some nice sentiments on here. And then it has dies that cut out the just and the because. And it'll give you a, here's that. So it'll give you the words, and then it'll give you kind of a shadow, and then like a solid background piece here. And then a few labels. So that's what that looks like. Now I did use, when I cut out that smallest rectangle from this piece, can you see that? I did use that for the sentiment. So we'll be doing that. And then the flowers in this leafy piece came from Petals of Beauty. So we've used the large flower, and then on the dies, I've used this piece. I did cut my flowers out with this die, so it does have the dies. And then, let's see, we used Cloud Cover Ribbon, which is new. So that's that. And it is 5/8 of an inch wide. And you get like 10 yards on the spool. So it's kind of, it's a nice ribbon though. It's real soft, so it's very easy to tie a bow. All right, so let's get started on this. We're going to start with the easy parts first, and then we'll work on this piece, okay? So let's go ahead and put our patterns paper on our card base. And I'm just using the green glue, which I do like because it gives you a little bit of time to get things straight. Okay, so there's that piece. Then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to flip it over to the back side. Now you can always tell when something's die cut, the front side will be smooth, the back side will be a little rougher. Okay, so I am going to put dimensionals on each corner, just on the corners. I don't want anything near that middle opening. Okay, so this is going to go just on the 4 corners, like so. Okay, so we have that. Now I will tell you, I did film this a few weeks ago, and I had it uploaded, and I started looking at it, and 10 minutes in, my sound died. So I'm going to try it without my microphone tonight and hope that that ends up better for us. Okay, so this is going to get centered right on that patterned piece as best as you can. Sorry, I had to pull it a little closer to me so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, and by putting that on dimensionals, our mechanism can go right through there. So see that? It's going to go right through there. Okay, so now let's do this piece. And again, the smooth side is your front side. And you can decide which paper you want to use. I'm going to go ahead and use this side. But either side would work, especially because both sides are just the two blues, right? So they will match very nicely. And I'm just centering that. So we have just that patterned border showing. Okay. Now, if you have directional paper, you need to make sure you look at that when you're cutting it, because you want to make sure when it's on here, your flowers aren't upside down, right? So I'm actually going to turn mine because it did look like it was a little bit upside down. This one's not as important as a lot of different papers could be, but just keep that in mind. If it's directional, you want to make sure that you're looking at that as you cut it. Okay, so now I have this on here the way I want it to end up, right? I'm going to flip it over so my top is actually at the bottom right now, okay? Then I'm going to take this piece. Now this piece measures, let's see, I believe it is 2 inches by 6 inches. And I have it scored at 3.5 and 4. So we have a shorter piece and we have a longer piece. Now the longer piece, I took an old punch that I had that had 2 holes in it, and I punched that. If you have a little slot punch, you just want something that your ribbon can go through, okay? So as I look at this, I folded both of those score lines so it creates a mountain fold, okay? So it looks something like that. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some tear tape on it. Okay, now this is our fold like this. I want tear tape here on that fold. So it's kind of like on the outside, we'll say, right? Like so. Then I'm going to flip it over, and on this short end, not the end that has the 2 holes, but the shorter end, I'm going to put tear tape on the underside. Okay, so once I get this on, I will show you what that looks like. All right, so that's what's going to hold our mechanism on. So again, 2 by 6 scored at 3.5 and 4. Between the 2 score marks, I have a piece of tear tape. Then I flip it over, and on the underside, I have tear tape on the short end. Okay, now the only one I'm going to pull off at the moment is the one that's between the 2 score lines. Okay, and I need this piece. So we want this, let me show you here. We want this to end up on the bottom of our front piece, right? So if I'm saying this is the front side, I literally just want to flip it over. So here's my bottom piece. I told you wrong before, so don't listen to that. All right, we want this to go on here. And again, I want you to look at that again, so that it's centered on the middle of the bottom of our top piece, okay? And I'm going to line, here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to line it up with the bottom of that top piece. And if your piece isn't directional, it doesn't matter, right? Which one's your top or bottom. However, it does matter what direction this piece goes in. It has to be at the bottom. It has to have the longer section coming off of the end. And then here's our little short piece. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So again, I just turned this over. I took off the backing on the score tape between the 2 score lines. Okay, and then I folded it. And maybe if you look at it like this, where you have here's the bottom, have both pieces come toward the top with the shorter piece on the bottom. Hopefully that makes sense. So I've got the longer piece with my holes in it facing toward the top right now, and I have it lined up at the bottom. Okay, so both score marks are on that top piece. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please ask questions, okay? All right, now I'm going to slide that through like so. I'm going to take off this backing on the tear tape of the top, and I'm going to line these two squares up. So I'm not pushing anything down. I'm lining these two squares up because when this card's closed, I want them lined up so that you don't see the other one. And once I get it lined up, I will press that down. What that's doing is it is making that top shorter piece adhere to the bottom. That's what creates the pulling mechanism. Okay? So that's our mechanism. Then on the inside, we are going to put this I Think You're Amazing. Now I just kind of winged it when I cut this, but this is, let's see. Well, that's an odd ruler, sorry. This is 2 inches by, I think, 4 inches. It's either 2 by 4. I don't know what that ruler is. I need to throw that out. So it's 2 by 3 7/8, okay? So this one is going to go right in here. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I hope I went slow enough on that mechanism. That's the trickiest part of this whole card. But once you get one done, it's so easy to make as many of them as you want, right? Because now it's just getting it right the first time. Okay. And if you use, here's what I would suggest. If you have, maybe not liquid glue, but maybe do like a repositional adhesive, which I do have that from Tombow just when I'm trying things. But it's a good way you can put it together, see if it's right, and then put permanent glue on later, right? Okay, so that's the inside of our card. Let's go ahead and add our ribbon piece. So I'm going to take this ribbon and I'm going to cut this to a really sharp point. That's going to help me guide it through the holes in the end piece. Okay, so we'll do that. There it is. All right, and I'm not even cutting this off of the bolt yet. So I'm going to go in one side, and I'm going front to back, possibly, if I can get it through there. Here we go. I just needed to grab it. But see how that helped me get that in there? If you're ever trying to get through any kind of slotted piece with ribbon, sharp point is your answer to get through there. Because then you only have a small piece to try to grab through. And we can always trim it when we're done. All right, so I just need enough for a bow. Now, if you were doing this as a masculine card, I would just tie a knot. Get a little more there. Okay. So now I'm going to make my ends the same length and go ahead and cut that off. And then I can tie this in a bow. So I'm just regular bow, tying it here. You could do linen thread, you could do a thinner ribbon. You could even just have like a tab that sticks out if you didn't want to do ribbon. Okay, I'm not trying to make it real wide, but I do want it a little wider than the piece. Okay, and once you get your ribbon the way you like it, trim your ends. I think I need to get new scissors. These aren't very sharp anymore. All right, so there's our ribbon. So our inside and our ribbon are completely done. Now we can go and figure out what we're going to do here. So I'm going to take this leafy piece, and I don't want any of this sticking off of this front piece. So I'm kind of arranging it so everything is on, but toward the right. The reason is when you start flipping this, it's going to get bent if it's hanging off. So I wouldn't have anything hanging off. All right, so I'm just going to put little dots of glue. And basically I'm doing it on the tips of the leaves, maybe the base of a leaf. Just enough that it's going to be held down, but it's not going to ooze glue when you put it down. All right, so we've got that. And now I'm going to set that on here. So it's off to the right. And you will need to hold it down for just a couple of seconds, just so that that glue has time to adhere. You could set a block on it. I find that kind of helps because then you're not putting your sticky fingers on it. All right, so we've got that. Now we have these two flowers. And I'm not worried about the centers. I know they look a little bare, but we are going to add some embellishments to that. And looks like I forgot to put those embellishments out, so let me find those real quick and see what I used here. I believe I used these. So I used the Pearls of Beauty. That's what we're going to use on this card. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put a dimensional on the back of each of these, and I'm just doing one. Just one dimensional is all it's going to take. I'm going to put the darker one on first, and I was actually going to show you, I will show you that. What I did here is I stamped in Balmy Blue my base, and then before re-inking the stamp, I stamped it again. So I stamped off. So we have first generation, second generation. Then I did the same with Night of Navy. Full strength ink here, stamped off version here. So I'm going to put this one down here in this corner. And here's another thing you could do. Kind of take your nail and curl the petals. Now when you put it in an envelope, it's going to mash them down, but it gives it some character. So I'm going to do that to both. And I'm actually going to turn this flower around so it's facing a different direction. So see how this one's got this leaf at the top? Nope, I guess it was like that. I'm going to turn this one around. And I'm tucking it under that one and kind of putting it off to the side like so. Then we're just going to glue this straight down. And again, this was that smallest rectangle from Textured Notes dies. And I believe those might be on the last chance list as well. I'll have to look that up. All right, so we have It's Your Birthday. And that It's Your Birthday was from that same Just Because set that we used for this I Think You're Amazing sentiment. All right, now let's go ahead and put some embellishments on there. So again, I'm using Pearls of Beauty, and I'm going to use the larger one right in the center here. And I'm using the white, but I like that it's got a little bit of a, almost a holographic hue in there, so it kind of picks up that blue. And then I'm going to put a small one right over here. So I'm creating that triangle with my embellishments, because that's what's pleasing to the eye. And then here's our finished card. Isn't that fun? All right, and then if you have a gift card, you can use glue dots. Let me see if I have a gift card handy here. I did have some, but I'm not sure where they went. Oh, here's one. All right, so you could put your glue dots here and here, and then when you put it in, you want it to go all the way up to the top of the mechanism so that when you close your card, you don't see it, but when you open it, it's there. Okay, so that's the gift card holder. And again, if you have questions, put them in the comments and I'd be happy to answer them for you. I hope I was clear on the mechanism. That was the hardest part. But again, you know, try it. It's paper, so if you screw up, it's not a big deal, right? You can always get another piece. Okay, so now let's move on to our next card. So our next card, I am going to use, here's the version that I did originally. I'm going to do one that is Blackberry Bliss. Okay, so here's my Blackberry Bliss version. Now I haven't done this one yet, so we're going to see how this goes, how it looks. All right, so I need some blending brushes and just looking for one that's I can use for Blackberry Bliss. Okay, there we go. Okay, so for this card, I used Friendly Foliage, and I wanted to show you how these dies work. That's part of the reason I did this card. Now I feel like I'm zoomed in too much, so let me zoom out just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so this one, when you stamp this image, which is a larger image, you have a choice. You can just cut out the foliage so it ends up looking like this. Okay, so here I had a piece of cardstock that is 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. I stamped the foliage piece pretty much right in the middle, okay? And then I cut it out using just this border piece. Now, if I wanted to, I could have put both of these on here. So I have this one and I have this piece, which cuts out some of the leaves. See how that lines up? And then it leaves you a border, like so. Oops. Okay, I had glue on my finger, so it took it off. What happens is you get a piece that looks like this. So see how it's got the cutout between the leaves. So it's kind of a cool effect. If you do it like this, you could put a piece of colored paper behind it and have that pop. What we're going to do is we're going to take this piece and do a little shading on it. Okay, so what I have done, once I cut that piece out, I stamped it, I cut it out. So I'm left with these two pieces. I took this piece and I embossed it with the Stone and Vine embossing folder. This is a 3D folder. I don't know, it gives a really cool effect, but I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here's what I have now. Can you see the texture on there? I'm hoping you can see that. All right, so let's take this piece. Let's see how that now, you've got this is flat and this is textured. People are going to be like, how did you do that? So we're going to show you how to do that. Okay, so let's do a little shading with our blending brushes. I'm going to start with the Blackberry Bliss, which I keep wanting to call eggplant for some reason today. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of that. I do want to maybe stamp a little bit of that off, so I'm just going to do that on a block. All right, and then I'm going to come here, and I'm starting from the bottom corner, and I'm going on an angle. And I want the bottom corner to be darker than the rest and get kind of lighter as we go. Okay. So that's the Blackberry Bliss. And I'm not going to go all the way up to the middle, but I'm getting close. All right, so then I'm going to take Timid Tiger, which is another color in our paper. And I'm going to wipe this off first because we don't want that in our way. Then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to start in this corner. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I've got Timid Tiger, starting here. I want it darker at the bottom, getting lighter as I go. So I'm easing the pressure as I go. A little more pressure at the bottom, ease the pressure as you go. And again, I'm not going all the way to the middle because I want just a little bit of that white showing. Isn't that pretty? Patty Bennett was showing how to do this, and I thought, wow, that is a great technique. Gives you some color. You don't have to worry about coloring it. All right, so now let's start putting this together. So this is a card base that's 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. I have a piece of that Floral Charm DSP, and that is 4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just going to lay that on here. Now, you're only seeing the outer parts of this, so if you wanted to cut something out of the middle of this, I would suggest doing that. Then you're not hiding all that beautiful paper. Okay, so now I have that. Then I'm going to take the piece that I embossed, and I'm going to put that on. And I like to use liquid glue for these embossed pieces because there's so many nooks and crannies that you don't always get everything to adhere. And I do want to go around the edges here because I don't want that to come up. So I am kind of going in around all these little edges. Okay. And then I'm going to put that down, and I'm centering that as well. Okay, so I have that piece. And then we're going to take this piece and we're going to pop that up with some dimensionals. So we had 63-degree weather on Friday, and today it's like 32. I don't know about you guys, but I am ready for spring. I liked the 60-degree weather. That was nice. All right, I'm putting, so these are the regular size dimensionals. I do want something on this little leaf here, so I am putting a mini dimensional on that. The sides aren't as crucial to have something on. You do need something there, though, on this top leaf because I feel like it sticks out further than the rest of them. All right, so we've got the backs off of those. And then I'm going to just nest this back in where it was cut out, but now it's popped up. So it gives a little bit of dimension. Can you see that? So we've got a little bit of dimension going on. And then I stamped Thinking of You, and that's from this set right here, Thinking of You. And I'm going to use the part, let's see, this is the banner punch, triple banner punch, I believe it's called. That's what that looks like. And I'm going to use that, and I want the middle one. So I'm just going to kind of center that in there, and it just fits. And then I'm going to punch that out like so. And we don't need these other pieces. And we're going to put that one across here. So what I do need to do is put a dimensional under the word you. And I'm doing that because this piece is popped up, so part of it's going to be glued on top of here and part of it's going to sit here. So I do want to make sure that it is the same height as the piece that we already popped up. Okay, so I'm going to add liquid glue to the other half. And then I'm going to place that right about there. Okay. And my liquid glue is still a little bit wet, so I'm going to make sure I do that. All right, and then the last step, and I have to remember where I got these from because I cut these kits for my in-person stamp camp quite a while ago. And I'm not real sure where I got them, but I'm going to put these pearls on. Let me see if I can find them real quick. Sorry, I should have done this before I started filming. So that is the Adhesive-Backed Pearl Trio. And you get 3 colors, and we're using this purpley one. Okay, so let's go ahead and put those on. And I'm going to put one of them kind of down here by the H. And one over here between the G and the O. But see how I have it partially on my tag and partially off? And then the last one is just going to kind of go up here into that orangey piece. So that's that card. Now we do have to do our inside. So I have cut a piece of white, basic white cardstock, 4 by 5 1/4. And I used the small leaf here and Mossy Meadow ink. And I stamped again before re-inking, re-inked, stamped again before re-inking. And I just did that in the two opposite corners. And I'm going to put that on the inside of the card. Now I don't have a sentiment on the inside because a thinking of you card could be for anything. It could be for a birthday. It could be you just thought of somebody today. It could be anything. So I do like to leave those blank so that you have room that you can write a message. Now, if you're one that doesn't like to write a lot of messages, then I would suggest putting a sentiment on here and you'd have less room, space to fill, right? All right. So that is the Blackberry Bliss version. Here's the Night of Navy version. And then here are our two cards that we made. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. If you have any questions about the projects we made, please don't hesitate to leave a question in the comments, and I will check them and get back to you. Okay? I hope you have a great evening. I will have another video shortly because I have more projects that I did a couple weeks ago to film, and I will post those as soon as I'm done. Have a great night, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.